Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A question. Is Floyd Schofield ready for Shakur Stevenson?
No.
Floyd Schofield faces a tough test when he takes on Shakur Stevenson on February 22nd. That is according to Oscar De La Hoya. Schofield is 22 and enters the fight with an undefeated 18-0 record. It is his first world title fight after having come through his last fight with Rene Tellez Hirong. He got off the canvas to win a unanimous decision that showed a lot of heart but also some flaws as he almost threw away the victory. But the opportunity for a world title has presented itself. Shakur, the reigning WBC lightweight champion, has seen his last two planned fights fall through. He was scheduled to face Joe Cordina, but Shakur pulled out after suffering a hand injury in sparring. That setback was massive as it would have been his first fight with Matchroom Boxing. He was then on course to box his WBC mandatory challenger, William Zapata. That fight fell through after William withdrew after suffering a hand injury. This may be the best time to catch Shakur since he's coming back from numerous setbacks that could stand Schofield in a good stead. But Oscar also recognized that it would not be easy. De La Hoya said, "I was the first one to say, we have to wait. We have a plan for you. We have a strategy for you." But the father was very adamant. The father, in particular, was the one who wanted this fight. Kid Austin is a throwback fighter. He's actually my favorite fighter today when it comes to fighting the very best. Fighting anybody, getting to the top and making history, that's his mentality. I love that, but for my taste, it was a little too ambitious. But they know exactly what they're doing, De La Hoya said.
I like Floyd Schofield's attitude, like his fighting style too.
Do you think he's gonna win?
No.
But I won't begrudge him his ambition or his belief in himself. If he believes he can go in there and upset the apple cart for Shakur, more power to him, as so many fighters out there don't want to fight Shakur. If this one does, I'm not going to castigate him for it. The grocery list of fighters that have circumvented a fight with Shakur in one way or another, it just doesn't get talked about enough that Isaac Cruz was actually ordered to fight him by the World Boxing Council, and he chose to go in another direction. Frank Martin withdrew.
Their fight was all but made until Frank pulled out.
William Zapata was supposed to be the next man in line, but he supposedly got injured, and now they seem to be planning a Tevin Farmer rematch?
Gervonta Davis has made no effort to fight Shakur Stevenson, even though that's a hot-button topic.
Gervonta himself seems to get very hot in the collar when asked about it. He gets mad if you bring up Shakur Stevenson's name up to him. He gets upset.
So when Floyd Schofield decides to step in and take on the fight that a lot of other people don't want,
maybe we should celebrate him for it. A win for Schofield will set up a huge opportunity. He could face a big name in-house since Zapata is with Golden Boy Promotions. It also opens doors for a unification. Gervonta Davis would likely be interested in that.
What?
When has Gervonta Davis ever been interested in unification matches? In any event, Tank has shown a reluctance to box Shakur, but facing Schofield could be justified since he would have a belt. It also fits Davis' style of facing the right fighter at the right time without taking too many risks. Is Floyd ready?
I don't think so.
If Schofield is overwhelmed, it could set him back for some time. At 22, there's no need to rush him into big fights. This is by far the toughest test. And while he does have 12 knockouts to his name, Shakur is one of the best defensive fighters on the circuit, but every fighter has their time. Oscar was ready to see what his fighter was made of. The father knows his son. We know his abilities inside the ring. Is it too early? Maybe. Is it the right time? Who knows? Only Kid Austin knows inside the ring that night. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. I think it's going to be a very, very entertaining fight, De La Hoya added.
There are too many B and C-level fighters in this era that negotiate a fight like they're A-level fighters, a byproduct of the Mayweather era and the more business-minded boxer.
You're saying that Floyd Schofield is a B-level fighter?
No, I'm saying that Floyd Schofield is a breath of fresh air. When Brian Norman drags his feet to go unify titles with a fellow champion in Jaron Ennis, when a Montes Stanionis does the same thing,
it all gets very tedious. And these are not A-level fighters. There's no historical precedent to suggest that they are. So when a Floyd Schofield, a greenhorn, very young guy, takes on a challenge like this one, It's a breath of fresh air from what we're used to, because in this era, too many B and C class fighters make it difficult to make a fight. You better know your role!
Know your place.
Floyd could have stayed on easy street a while longer. He's 22 years old. He really doesn't have to rush into something like this, but that deviation, that break from the norm, it does create an air of intrigue, an air of excitement. And sports, all sports, in a very general sense, rely on an excited audience.
Excitement.
Gotta keep people excited. If everything's always going to plan, well, that doesn't happen. I don't think this was part of the original plan for Floyd Schofield, no. And I don't think that this is a fight that he's ready for. I think he's gonna lose. But so long as he can give a good account of himself, have a few moments of success, he can parlay that into something bigger, something better. He's only 22.
He can lose the fight. He's got plenty of time to recover at that age. The rebound.
What do I think motivated Floyd's father to push him into this situation? It's the money, mostly. The money in tandem with Floyd's young age. That this is the best money in boxing right now. The opportunity to make this kind of money on a Riyadh season show, you better get it while it's there.
They did.
And if things don't go your way, it's alright. Your son's young anyway. He's got plenty of time to recover from a loss. A calculated risk, and I reiterate, I like Floyd Schofield's attitude.
Fighters that behave like fighters. Can we bring that back?
Up to my ears in fighters that want to behave like business guys that want to behave like suits.
Yeah.
In men's heavyweight news, the comeback fighter of the year is Daniel Dubois. There has long been a sense with Daniel Dubois that we are watching him grow in public, not only as a boxer, but as a man. It should therefore come as no surprise when he experiences highs and lows, and in turn comes back, and moments when we are stunned by the rate of his development. He is, after all, always in development. He is learning to fight. He is learning how to wear a suit, and he is learning how to conduct himself at a press conference and in interviews. It is for Daniel Dubois all a learning process, this boxing lark. And of this, we see the evidence every time he sets foot in a ring or on a dais before the world's media. Sometimes he expresses himself fluently, more so with his fists than his mouth. Granted, whereas on other occasions he freezes up,
He gets all tense.
runs out of ideas, and we are reminded that some mature and develop quicker than others. In a strictly boxing sense, Dubois, now 27, has truly come of age this year, so much so that the act of him confronting Alexander Usyk on December 21st, just moments after Usyk had beaten Tyson Fury, wasn't considered half as egregious as it would have been 12 months ago, last year in fact. When Dubois was stopped in 9 rounds by Usyk, the thought of the Londoner ever again goading the Ukrainian, let alone sharing the ring with him, would have been inconceivable. Yet now, having had as good a 2024 as anyone, Dubois suddenly finds himself in a position to rematch Usyk with an IBF heavyweight belt to his name. On reflection, the journey back all started with Dubois beating Filip Hrgovic in June. That represented the first real test of Dubois since losing to Usyk, and in round one, a round he lost. We saw the extent of what Dubois was up against. Time and time again, he found himself nailed by Hrgovic's right hand, and it seemed only a matter of time before one of them would unravel Dubois and send him back to Britain with his world title ambitions well and truly dashed. Dubois, of course, had other ideas. He knew that the key to beating Hrgovic was to make him dispirited and outlast him, and therefore he maintained belief, despite the early rounds going the way of the Croatian. Soon, as expected, Dubois settled and grabbed a foothold in the fight. Then, in round 8, the damage to Hrgovic's face was deemed too severe for him to continue.
Well, Daniel's story is definitely a comeback story. I'll give him that much. But he is not so different from how he used to be that I'd say he's the most improved.
And it's not a knock on Daniel, you understand. It's just an objective observation that while he's doing very well now and he's riding high, coming off the biggest win of his career, his technical and tactical flaws are still there to be exploited by someone else.
You can stand in front of Jarrell Miller, bang it out. You did the same thing with Filip Hrgovic, and you did it with Anthony Joshua.
But what if it were Zhilei Zhang? Statuesque southpaw, Chinese danger man, Zhilei Zhang. Can you stand in front of him and do that same stuff? I'm not so sure.
Because styles make fights.
The Daniel Dubois story, at least up until this point, is definitely a great comeback story, though he himself is not the most improved, and because he isn't, don't jump off a cliff with the knee-jerk reactions. Boxing fans often live in extremes.
I can't say with any certainty that I think Daniel Dubois is the heir apparent to the heavyweight division and that he will rule it.
Usyk is still the man to beat, and he doesn't seem to have any plans of retiring. Daniel Dubois plans to have a rematch with him
If he beats Joseph.
So, this is where whether or not Daniel has actually improved becomes a factor, an important one. Is he now so different than he was when he faced Usyk?
Has he really changed so much?
A lot is being made of Daniel's last 3 fights with his last 3 opponents, but the best one among them is yet another guy that Usyk beat. Not once, but twice.
AJ.
Moves on to fight Tyson Fury, beats him 2 times. Now you're gunning for a rematch.
Are you the next British heavyweight he's gonna beat for his second time? For good measure. Because you're asking for it.
He's got more of a chip on his shoulder now, seems a lot more confident, but as far as his approach, it hasn't changed so much that I wouldn't pick Usyk to beat him again. I picked Usyk to beat him the first time, and I'd pick Usyk to beat him again.
Beat him now.
Small cult of Usyk detractors hanging on by a thread to the quote-unquote body shot that looked like a low blow to some, a body shot to others.
Well, they need something to use against Usyk, so they use that.
Forgetting that it was never up to Alexander Usyk himself to decide whether it's a legal blow or not. It was actually up to the referee, Louis Pabon, and he made that call in a split second.
Do you forget you're dealing with children?
Claiming that the victory was taken from Daniel Dubois. What victory?
And people with ulterior motives?
So when Usyk rises to his feet, what was stopping Daniel from going back to his midsection, back to his body? Did the fight between them not go on for several rounds after that, where Daniel had every opportunity to go back to doing what he did before?
Losers.
The people talking up this quote-unquote controversy are nothing but a bunch of losers. Angry they got it wrong.
You're a loser.
Reflecting on their initial meeting ahead of what could be a second fight, what could be a rematch in the coming year, because you never really know.
Daniel has a great comeback story.
I would like his chances against Usyk a lot better if he had improved. But I don't see any improvements.
He's confident. He's a lot more confident.
But he still doesn't move his head. He still doesn't keep it off the line. He still goes in there barreling forward looking for a knockout, vulnerable to counter punches.
Still open.
And credit to him for clawing his way back to the top. But the belt that he has now, he only has because Usyk gave it to him.
As a gift.
Something to bring to the Anthony Joshua fight while Usyk settles up with Fury for a second time. That's all that was.
An inconvenient truth. Here at year's end.
This just established a new era in boxing where the best heavyweight of all time has overcome Tyson Fury. Like now we have a new prime heavyweight boxer that we could look at and say this guy is like a role model for all heavyweight boxers. This guy is good. This guy can pretty much beat anybody. There's no boxer right now in the heavyweight division that can beat Usyk. Name me one fighter that can beat Usyk. Nobody. He beat Daniel Dubois. He beat Tyson Fury twice. He beat Anthony Joshua twice. What more do you want from this guy? He's literally a legend. And if he went up against Muhammad Ali right now, he would probably beat Muhammad Ali right now.
That is what I would call jumping off a cliff. Boxing fans often living in extremes. It's a bit extreme to say that Usyk is now the greatest heavyweight that ever lived because he beat Derek Chisora, Anthony Joshua 2 times, Fury 2 times, and Daniel Dubois. There are other heavyweights with a more extensive body of work than his.
Heavyweights.
So to suggest that he is the greatest one among them, that he is the greatest heavyweight of all times, communicates ignorance of the heavyweight division, the way it works, and the fighters that are there. The caller,
The casual.
suggested that Usyk would beat Muhammad Ali. I don't know how I feel about that, because you must understand that Muhammad was a 15-round fighter in the 15-round era. Things were a lot more gutting and gritty back then than they are now. And the advantages that Usyk has taken advantage of, he would not have over Muhammad Ali.
So in an era where the median height for a heavyweight is anywhere in between 6'3" to 6'8",
You're gonna run into a lot of lumbering lummoxes. Guys who are big but slow.
strong but with poor stamina.
The challenges that Alexander Usyk has encountered here today would be different in a previous era of boxing where the heavyweights aren't so big, aren't so slow, many of them are athletic. If what you're talking about is a fight with Cassius Clay, that is a prime Muhammad Ali, before he lost his legs and before the exile.
Lightning fast. Much faster than anybody Usyk has fought. Much faster than any and every heavyweight here today.
Usyk hasn't had to contend with that kind of speed, power, or athleticism in any division that he's campaigned in. It's not far-fetched to say that Muhammad Ali is a better fighter than anybody Usyk fought.
A different fighter than anybody Usyk fought.
So when you're Alexander Usyk in this modern era of heavyweights, where a lot of the guys are bigger than you are, but slower, poor stamina, poor coordination,
Cardio.
that's an advantage that Usyk has over them, but not an advantage that he would have over Cassius Clay, because Cassius Clay, unlike today's fighters, was a 15-round fighter.
Better cardio and coordination than any of today's heavyweights.
With speed and some power. I find it comical how so many talk about these fantasy fights with so much conviction when they only exist inside our minds, and we ourselves set what the rules are. But for an objective analysis of how a Usyk versus Cassius Clay fight might go, you have to factor that into the equation.
Mayris Briedis, to a lot of people, gave Usyk his hardest fight. Harder than Anthony Joshua, harder even than Tyson Fury. Mayris Briedis. And Mayris Briedis is not a big guy.
No, he's eye level to Alexander Usyk, and you know who else would be eye level to Usyk? Ali. They're both 6'3". So while Usyk can out-hustle, out-maneuver the slow guys in today's heavyweight division, out-maneuvering and out-hustling Ali.
I don't know about that.
No, they're both combination punches, Alexander Usyk and Muhammad Ali. They got different sweet spots. I'd say that Ali's best punches were his straight punches from the outside coming in, whereas Usyk's best punches really are his bent arm punches within close quarters. It's a fantasy fight, so you can't talk about it with this sense of finality as if there is a conclusive answer. Not until somebody builds a time machine.
I'm more settled into some fantasy fights than others as far as what I think the outcome would be, but I wouldn't get too bent out of shape over it.
It's a fantasy fight, you understand? Goddamn fantasy, meaning it's never gonna happen.
Two fighters displaced by time.
Though if what you're doing is thinking about that fight in objective terms, what you must factor into the equation is that Usyk is a lot more athletic and quick than today's heavyweight, but perhaps not yesterday's, because yesterday's heavyweight was around his size.
Yesterday's heavyweight was a 15-round fighter.
I really don't think today's heavyweights have 15 rounds in them. To fight at the pace that Ali fought against Joe Frazier?
No.
3 times? There are nuances to this conversation. And if you're not going to acknowledge them, you may as well not even have it, because then it's not interesting. Not if you're not being honest.
It's the whole fun of analyzing these fantasy fights, is looking at all the characteristics that got two fighters success and asking who would win.
And I personally would not rush to the assumption that Usyk would beat Ali.
It's a stretch.
Or that he is now the greatest heavyweight of all times? Maybe he's one of the all-time greats, but the greatest?
Nah, I wouldn't say that.